I have had the draft of this script sitting on my computer for months. Reason being, I just couldn't figure out how the hell to start it. And I'm not joking, I started this back in November of last year. Well, I finally decided to start this video in the most unconventional way possible. With a simple, if not cringy, poem. Don't worry, it's just the intro. Here goes. I arose from my slumber in a confused haze, unaware of my adventure in the coming days. Little did I know before venturing into town, that this place will turn my world upside down. And I say that in more ways than one, to be fair. As I learned how to float through space and air. I got my gadgets and gear, launch codes are set. Onwards to an experience I will never forget. 3, 2, 1, and I shot up into space. I wish I could see the look that was on my face. Curiosity as my compass, and mystery as my fuel. A supernova, and suddenly, an instant renewal. A smile grew slightly, as now I needed to know. Just how deep and far does this mystery go? I got to work searching like an eager detective. The truth of this place was my only directive. I came across fellow explorers along my travels. They helped me learn as the mystery unravels. I found a lead that I can finally trace. A secret to learn about an ancient race. With the clues gathered in my knowledge base, I drifted along into a hidden place. For a while I thought I had reached a dead end, until I found someone that I could call friend. The puzzle was completed, the end goal in sight. Then I realized this will be my last flight. I started my final journey, and I cannot fail anymore. I must find the one thing they desperately looked for. I traveled the outer wilds one last time. Looking back, I could say it was simply sublime. There's a not so old joke that can be found on YouTube comments and other mediums, and it goes something like this. Born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the universe, born just in time for blank. Usually, memes. This little phrase came to mind after I finished my playthrough of the Outer Wilds. I was born too late to explore new continents, and I was born too early to drift through the vastness of space. But I am lucky to be born in a time where I could explore a tiny little solar system. One that is so different than my own, and yet it feels like home thinking back on it. This game is nothing short of special, and I do not exaggerate when I say I will never forget the Outer Wilds. As I'm writing this sentence, I'm listening to the music that is played by some of the characters in the game, and even though it may sound strange, I'm struggling to not get emotional. Maybe it's just good songwriting that can pull on my heartstrings, but the experiences that I had during my playthrough are in a league of their own. It reminds me of why I love video games. I am often bored of reading, watching TV, or watching movies, because you're a static observer in those mediums. In video games, however, you're both the observer and the catalyst. So many big budget titles that place emphasis on story nowadays are trying their hardest to become movies. But that degrades the potential of storytelling in video games. The Outer Wilds proves that. Alright. I know I've been doing nothing but embellishing this video in an attempt to sing the game's praises. I just had to get some of it off my chest. I love this game, and I recommend it to anyone, especially if exploring appeals to you. And I mean true exploring. Not walking around a map with randomly spawning enemies and quest markers. True exploring that will bring out your inner child as you say, "Ooh, what's that thing? I want to go there." A game where your curiosity is your motivation, and your quest for answers is the script for you to write. Some people may not enjoy it, especially if the thought of that doesn't appeal to you. But I truly believe Mobius Digital made something amazing here, and he deserved more recognition than they got. For those who haven't played or heard of the game, I'll give you a quick rundown on the basic premise. You play the part of a novice space explorer of an alien four-eyed race. Immediately you will notice the cartoonish art style that is very reminiscent of a childlike world. In fact, you can even sit at a campfire and cook marshmallows. This is the tone that is set very early on in the game. Well, you eventually come across a statue that turns around and looks at you. You will later find out that this is the primary mechanic of the Outer Wilds. From this point, if and when you die, you get reborn back to the place you first wake up. And trust me, you will die time and time again. It basically takes the moon mechanic from Majora's Mask, with everything resetting except for your ship's log, because without it, you couldn't really track your progress. You are then given a device that translates some ancient texts left behind by a race that is now long gone. This will be your main source of progress, as you will learn about the solar system based on the information gathered by this device. You also get your own ship, and you can fly around anywhere, even the sun if you choose. And that's the basics. That's it. Get your stuff, go, have fun. I love the execution of this concept. It reminds me of games like Subnautica, where you have a goal, and there is some text to provide lore and information, but there's nothing really to hold your hand. However, where Subnautica differs and arguably fails is that the primary reason to explore is to gather materials to make exploration easier and in some cases possible. You're essentially gatekept from certain areas until you develop the right diving gear and vehicles. This is not the case with the Outer Wilds. The only thing preventing you from finishing the game in your first wake is your severe lack of knowledge. There's no upgrading, no gatekeeping besides the launch codes at the start, but that's more of a necessity because it requires you to walk past the statue that kicks off the story. The only thing that you really need is to solve the mystery of your tiny solar system and figure out why exactly you keep reviving. Its journey to the ending is orchestrated in a way where Subnautica simply cannot compete. Now, since this game relies so heavily on exploration, it has to entice players to explore, and it's done perfectly because of its incredibly diverse and creative planets. Timberhearth is your home and most closely resembles Earth, but there's plenty of hidden secrets on your home planet for you to explore. Even its moon will attract your attention, because it's oddly shaped and you can even see a smokestack coming off of it. Giant's Deep is the biggest planet, which is oddly smooth, because it's actually covered in a layer of storm clouds, and once you enter it, you see a world of rain, winds, water, and large water spouts. It's also being orbited by a strange broken structure that you see explode every time you wake up. Brittle Hollow is a planet that is being absorbed by a black hole at its core. It falls apart piece by piece, being sucked in and teleported to a white hole far, far away from any other planet. Even its moon is intriguing because it's constantly shooting molten rocks at Brittle Hollow's surface. And yes, there is stuff to find on that moon as well. Dark Bramble is obviously the most intimidating looking planet, and the naming isn't very subtle, but the look of the planet exploded by a strange growth is fascinating to say the least. The Interloper is a comet that is probably seen as a fun challenge to players once they notice it due to its high speed and unconventional orbit. However, if a player is skilled enough to land on it and perceptive enough to see how to enter it, they will find some secrets there too. Finally is, of course, Ash Twin and Ember Twin, which are two planets that start off with their respective colors, but then sand from Ash Twin starts flowing towards Ember Twin. It's fun to watch, and I lost my ship a few times in the flow. It's basically an hourglass, and it tracks the amount of time each cycle has. Once all the sand from Ash Twin is transferred to Ember Twin, the sun will explode and the loop restarts. All of these planets are just oozing with creativity and just simple weirdness that just setting your eyes on them will make you want to explore them. So that begs the question, why exactly should you explore these planets except for simply sightseeing? Well, remember that gadget that helps you read ancient text? Yeah, your job is to use this to learn about the Nomai, the ancient race that has passed away. They left behind several of their own structures, their writings, their inventions, their dwelling places, their spacecraft, and eventually you realize that they weren't here just to live, but they were here in search of something. You must then find out, what were they looking for? What was so important that they had to invent something that time travels you whenever you die? How did they do this? Why are they all gone? These questions dwelled in my mind for days as I spent scouring this tiny solar system for answers. Now, as a disclaimer, I cannot go over everything I found. I did 100% complete the ship log of all discoverable pieces of information, and at this point, I look back on that as an achievement. Furthermore, I don't want to spoil absolutely everything about the game. It would make the video too long anyways. But for the next segment of this video, I want to bring up a seemingly unrelated topic. And it can be a hot button issue for some, but please give me a few minutes and it will make sense eventually. A few months ago, I came across a video titled An Evening of Eschatology. It was a panel of 4 Christian theologians discussing the book of Revelation. These 4 pastors sat around a table. One was the moderator, while the other 3 represented 3 different views on a very specific part of the book of Revelation, specifically referring to the millennium in which Christ reigns for 1,000 years. They all agreed to provide scriptures to argue for their side and explain how their interpretation of that part of the Bible makes the most sense. Let me play a small clip to show how it sounds listening to these men discuss this. And I promise, after the clip is over, I'll explain why I'm bringing this up.
I looked under the altar and saw the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the witness they had borne. Precisely the same Greek language is used. And he's talking about those in the intermediate state.
No.
Yes, he is.
But Sam,
Revelation 6 is talking about those in the intermediate state.
But look what happens to them after the intermediate state at the end of verse 4. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. So first,
of the glory of Christ and so forth. 1 Peter 5, Satan is prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour.
He thinks that freedom of the devil stopped at 70 AD.
Yeah, God of this age.
Oh my.
So Jesus said.
No, I'd agree with you. See, I would agree with you on that, Jim. And I would think
We have shifting
1 John
alliances.
5,
But Jim, just where was he going? Finish.
So are you saying, Jim, that no unbeliever can come to faith in Christ?
no. First, let's give John his
I've
turn.
lost control.
Yeah.
Matthew 28. What was the point?
The point in Matthew is Jesus gives the church our marching orders. What's unclear about it? He says, I have all authority in heaven and on earth. It's all mine.
Okay, so the reason why I bring this up is because I watched this video months after I finished The Outer Wilds. And when I hear them digging through the pages, reading specific lines, coming to conclusions, arguing with each other over details and context, I can hear it in their voices how desperately they are searching for the truth behind the mystery. And as I watched that video, I had constant flashbacks to The Outer Wilds. As I explored the solar system and uncovered the texts that the Nomai had left behind, and discussed phenomena with the other explorers, and tried to piece the story together, staring at my ship log, thinking what I could be missing and where the clues could be, that feeling became so associated with The Outer Wilds that I was reminded of the game while watching a video about Christian theology. Maybe that's just me, but there's something about my personality that just loves the idea of being a detective that searches for the most complex aftermath of a story and just piecing it together to understand what exactly happened here. There is only one other game that is giving me a similar feeling about its rich, mysterious discovery of its narrative, and that's Return of the Obra Dinn. Where Return of the Obra Dinn succeeds is in its simple and pleasing art style, strange but catchy music, unique mechanics not found anywhere else, wonderfully obscure story, and its ability to catch you off guard. The Outer Wilds took all of those strengths and made them their own. It is uniquely Outer Wilds, and yet it calls back to a game that quickly became one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. And similarly, The Outer Wilds has taken that same spot. I haven't even talked about the music yet. I thought the video was over. No, let's talk about the music. This soundtrack is perfect, and the game uses it wonderfully to not just fill dead air, but to create impact to specific events and points of discovery. Very early on, you get a device that is used to listen in on distant sounds and radio waves. This is used to track specific points of interest. But you can also use it to listen to the music that the other space travelers are playing. The best part about it is that they're all playing the same song at the same time. You can actually get an achievement for lining them up to hear the full song too. There is something so wholesome about a song being played planets away, and yet your friends are playing the exact same song with you. Even in this game about the death of an ancient race, and the time loop leading to the inevitable demise of your whole world, there is a sense of innocence and tranquility. A sense of home, even when you're planets apart. And then you get that song when you discover something important left behind by the Nomai. You get the somber tones to remind you that the Nomai ultimately failed in their mission and never lived long enough to see the fruits of their labor. And then there's the music you hear just before every reset. You become trained by the game to recognize this tune as a signal of the clock resetting. It has a melancholic sound that adequately matches the idea that the solar system is meeting its end. Until of course you get to the ending, and an altered version of this song plays all throughout your final voyage. Honestly, it brought tears to my eyes when I first heard it. This game trains you to recognize death as just a reset point, and then forces you to disable that mechanic and travel to the most dangerous reaches of the solar system to complete the mission that your predecessors failed to achieve, and you must remember there is a time limit. I felt so many emotions during that final voyage. The feeling of desperation to complete it successfully, the feeling of fear because a death finally meant a game over, the feeling of dedication to see it done despite the risks, the feeling of panic when I ran out of fuel and was running on air to propel me toward my goal, the feeling of confusion and unfamiliarity when I finally arrived, and the feeling of satisfaction for solving the mystery. It was phenomenal. And upon reaching the end, what am I greeted with? The other explorers to play their song one last time. The Outer Wilds has touched my heart in ways I didn't think video games could. It stimulated my mind in ways I can only hope more games will replicate in the future. I may not be able to explore the vastness of our universe, but frankly, I think I got a better version of that here in the Outer Wilds. My name's Aeon. Thanks for watching. Wait, what? New DLC? How is this going to play into the time loop? The game ended so perfectly, why are they adding more? I have questions! And I need answers. I guess you know what that means. It's almost time for another voyage. And maybe you'll find me out there, exploring just like everyone else. Oh, and be sure to bring some marshmallows. My name's Aeon. Thanks for watching.